Hello and good evening. Welcome to our 66 brainstorming meeting on this 12th of September. So today we are discussing the idea of magic of convenience. This is something we covered last week for handy little spells, handy little things you can do to make your life easier, make your day easier, make your work easier. And we discussed quite a lot of material that came in from the social networks, and we decided that this week we would look more into developing a path for actually using those ideas, using that convenient magic in the 66 system. So with me today covering this, we've got Chris Chigenza, Patrick King, Emily King, Jay Foster, and Josh Radford. So we're going to chew over that fat today and see how far we can get. But first I'm going to hand over to Josh to do some check-ins and find out how all of our weeks have been.
Yeah. So, Chris, tell me about your week so far.
My week has been, well, it's a bit sort of technical this week because I've been manipulating databases, getting all, upgrading the system so we can handle people registering and getting all the downloads working and stuff like that. And hopefully, probably they're going to be sort of Sunday or Monday, emails will be going out to everybody who's either an existing member or on the Kickstarter, telling them about the update and telling them they can download the absolute latest versions of the PDFs under the new WYSIWYG download system. So a lot of technical stuff this week, but a good week. Progress has been made.
Fantastic. So, Pat, what about yourself?
Juggling parents and social requirements and the comic I'm working on, the film and all of that, and so yeah. Not easy to focus on anything, basically.
Sounds like fun. How about you, Jay? Any cheesecake this week?
No cheesecake this week. Yeah, just paperwork and bureaucracy has been basically what my life's been today. This week is just slowly grinding through the tedium of building a. Do you think engineering, given what I do, will be more interesting? But no, I've grown a beard to relieve the tedium.
You just about see it on the screen as well. How about you, Mark? Your fantastic beard, how have you been?
I've been okay. I have a much more convincing beard than James does, which means our week has gone significantly better. Yeah, it's all been okay, really. Busy at work, still working through faults and getting stuff fixed for the products which we're currently working on and supporting production for that. So busy, but looking forward to a good weekend of travelling around and visiting people.
Fantastic. As for myself, it's been an alright week compared to the last 2 weeks of absolute hell at work. So, it started off well, and it's got a bit crap the last 2 days, but hey, that's life. Otherwise, in 66 terms, me and Alex have been doing the traditional throw ideas around until we find something we absolutely like, and then start working on it about. And that's my week, really. Oh, and apologies for not being here last week. So, I believe I'm going to pass you now on to Jay.
Yes, yes indeed. Me. I am doing the talking thing now. However, I noticed Emily gesticulating in the background. You forgot to ask her how her week was.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realise. Sorry, Emily. How was your week?
Very interesting. I started college this week for the first time in 6 years for my Access to Midwifery course, and already bogged down with paperwork for the midwifery course. So yeah, it's been quite strange getting back into study mode. I have also delivered a few commissions of mine and been reading a film script for a local film because I'm been hired to do some art for that. So yeah, it's been very busy. And for 66, I've been drawing loads of models off porcelain heads.
Creepy.
So yeah, it's been a bit of a mixed week.
Oh, dear. Sounds like my uni days all over again. So, no, that's nice and sorted. My apologies once again. I shall pass you back to Jay.
So, the magic of convenience. Essentially, convenient magic. So, in the last few weeks, we've been rapidly just banding around ideas on spells. And as we've been thinking about these ideas, we've actually been thinking, well, how can we turn these ideas into something that we can actually use in 66? Now, for those of you who don't know how 66 works, firstly, shame on you. Shame on you. You really should be paying more attention. Secondly, we essentially built around the concept of parts. A path is essentially a heading we give to 9 advantages. These are skills, feats, body aspects, spectacular powers, little things, or godly advantages that your character has available to them. So what we kind of want to do is take a look at some of the ideas we've come up with the last few weeks and see how we can fit them into a path. So what we're looking for essentially is, well, in the complete path would have a few live cards to fill this in, but I think specifically what we're going to look at is, say, pick one of the ones I'm going to randomly go out and pick at and think, okay, well, what kind of spells would work really quite well with these particular ones? So to kick the ball rolling, I'm going to ask the group as assembled for ideas on what kind of path or what kind of advantage you think would go well with a food mage, who I think we're going to go Nutrimancer is the best we've got for that, trying to come up with nutrition. And the one I'm going to kick off with is Grow, which is a spell I came up with last week on the idea that you simply can make plants grow. Now I think this is quite an interesting idea to start off with, because if you're going to be producing food, ultimately a really good way of producing that food is to start growing things. So that's my first one into the pot, and I'm going to pick at random Chris.
Yes, I'm going to cheat and pick one we talked about a couple of weeks ago. I think this one came from Reddit a couple of weeks ago, and it's the pepper spray, which is, no, what did we call it? Summon Spice. That was the actual name of the spell. And yeah, it basically allows you to summon small amounts of spices to sort your food out, herbs, salt, those sorts of things. But with the side effect also, possibly you can use it to summon a cloud of pepper as a sort of anti-attack defensive spell. But yeah, just something nice and easy, given that if you look at medieval and ancient societies, just how valuable and important spices are, magic which could summon it from, I don't know, the plane of spice, wherever these things come from, would be absolutely wonderful. So that would definitely be up for my gourmet mage.
That's good. Yeah, I like the idea of that. Sticking with the idea of spices and that, Pat, you've got season.
I said that basically that was exactly what Chris just said. I was just thinking a spell that lets you season food, but I did have another one I put up there, which was nutritional boost, which is a spell that basically alters the nutritional content of food without altering the flavour. So it reduces the fat and saturated. The saturated fats or salt content, and then it basically increases the kind of vitamin and protein content, carbohydrate content.
Yeah, I quite like that because that's really neat. I mean, on an actual calorie level, that'd be really amazing. Because your stuff, this tastes really amazing, and now it's also good for me, Chris.
Yeah, and on the side of that, of course, we have scurvy and similar diseases. So, none of this taking limes with you, just get the right nutritional benefit for your long sea voyages. It would vastly improve long-distance sailing.
Yeah, I can easily imagine that'd be quite interesting. And speaking of that kind of thing, long-distance sailing is the kind of thing where food starts to go rotten and bad, and all sorts of kind of fun and games and trouble you got there. Which brings me on to what Josh was suggesting, the idea of poison tasting.
Well, that's the side effect of it. I don't really have a name for this spell yet. The idea is that you can tell if food is off. Is this food safe for my character to eat? Yes or no? Ooh, that egg's been in the fridge a few weeks. Blip. No, I'm not going to have that. But with the added side effect of, is that food poisoned? Blip. Yes, it is. It's a way of testing if food is indeed poisoned.
It's also, you can imagine it drifting on there, being able to detect the quality of food as well. You could easily use it as well. How good is this going to be? I mean, if someone's trying to sell you a pie, you could look at it and say, well, what's actually in this pie? Is it juicy cuts of meat, or is it mostly just depressing parsnip? Mark, I'm just going to raise an eyebrow at this one. Lasagna bandages?
It's going slightly outside the idea of the magic for making food. How about magic for using food? So in this case, you can make healing rolls by using lasagna as bandages. It's in lasagna sheets. Or you could tie them on with linguine. Things like that. Is what can you do with food and magic to have other uses, for example?
So you could... Well, basically, I'm out of ammunition now. Good job, I've got all the spaghetti left behind. Yeah, my scones have become essentially so. My scones are so badly baked, they're actually just rocks. Yeah, that's potentially interesting.
Use that as a flame breath attack. It's,
Yeah.
Or is using magic for other stuff.
Yeah, not a bad one. Emily, on ingredient tracking?
Yeah, just the
Well,
idea.
just seconds. Please get to unmute first. There you go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just the idea of having some sort of spell that would actually like kind of light up and lead you towards edible foods. So if you're stuck in a forest, it will lead you towards actual eatable berries and not poison berry.
So that works as an accompaniment perhaps to the one that Josh was talking about with the quality, or is this food safe to eat? The idea that it also has some kind of tracking element may be available, or a version of that spell. Or, I mean, that kind of idea of having a track food spell and casting it at the same time as your safe food spell. You can put the two together and you can track for safe food. So that's an interesting idea of neatly using the 66 advantages to kind of put a few of these things together. Okay, I think we've got, what's that, 5 or so good advantages, I think, for the food mage. That's going quite nicely. So the next one we've got up is the clerical mage, which we've kind of nicknamed the buromancer. Though I'm going to just talk randomly for a little bit, having moved on, about what I think that is to give people a chance to ping. So buromancer, this is a bit kind of the query of the word, because that does kind of basically work on the idea of the magic of foretelling the future using the contents of your desk. However, Emily, hopefully you've got something a bit better.
Well, that was actually me, so we're using the same computer. Alphabetize. It's a spell that, when cast, everything within its kind of cone of influence is shuffled into alphabetical order. So
Anything.
Well, you could use it on paperwork, but if you're a particularly powerful buromancer, you could fire it down a dungeon corridor so that all the abyssals are at the front, the holders are behind them, demons all the way down to Xylem at the end.
That would work quite well if you knew particularly that whoever wrote the bestiary was being particularly lazy and the A monsters were weaker than the Z monsters. That would work well. I just love the idea of basically walking into a crowded marketplace and going, setting this thing off and causing absolute havoc because suddenly everyone finds themselves in alphabetical order.
Yeah.
Also, particularly if it depends, because it's the kind of thing to alphabetalize would have to know something's true name.
Yeah.
So you could find spies if they were pretending to be if they were pretending to be someone else and their name didn't line up with their true name. Because you just tell them, well, why are you here? Your name begins with a Z. You're at the front. Which actually leads quite neatly onto what Josh was talking about, locating people via paperwork.
High-level Puromancer spell. Cast it on the paperwork. Seek target. You find out where that person is at all times. It's a great way of tracking tax dodgers and whatnot.
Yeah, so essentially, it's almost coming of a summon map, or on the ideas that, yeah, it's okay, I've lost this person, I have their signature on something. What kind of bureaucratic things can I do with that? That's quite interesting, yes. Chris, as a man with bad handwriting myself, why would I want someone to be able to read what I'm writing?
Yeah, I was just thinking along the lines of the obvious spells. I mean, you get them in D&D, the sort of read languages and things like that. And I thought, well, actually, you really want something like read bad handwriting or read doctor's handwriting. So it's stuff which actually, you know, it's not a question of you don't understand the language. It's just that you can't actually decipher what they've written down. So just something which allows you to read perfectly what the person actually wrote down or intended to write down. That would be certainly something which I think would be very useful. And I'll just throw in on top of that an obvious one, a spell checker. Yeah.
Oh God. Yes. When a spell checker, that does make kind of sense. Like, what does this do? Well, it makes sure I incarnate the thing I wanted to. Because if I put this diphthong in the wrong place, that'll summon an eldritch demon, not a little imp. So yes, a spell checker to go with your read handwriting is probably going to be a good idea. Pat, filing?
Yeah, like in a lot of kind of fantasy games, there's like spells which do things like summon a house, or make bags which have lots of space on the inside. A spell which summons an interdimensional filing cabinet, which can fit an infinite number of files. Documents, yeah.
Yeah, I imagine that would be particularly something you'd want the alphabetized spell for, because eventually that will get quite unwieldy. I mean, I'm assuming that your international filing cabinet isn't one of those ones that will tip over.
Yeah. No, I was thinking more like the filing cabinet in Bruce Almighty.
Yes, going longer and longer and longer. Yes,
longer,
it's always nearby what you want it to be.
I thought the combat use for the alphabetize as well is if you cast it on somebody, all of their internal organs are alphabetized.
That's horrific.
That's pretty unpleasant, Pat. Yeah, quite yummy. Enough now. But moving on from unpleasant to more unpleasant, Josh, you want to turn people into paper?
It's a little more advanced than just say turn someone to stone. You're literally turning somebody onto a sheet of paper. Here's the details of all their life, all their achievements, their fears, their hopes, their loves, their hates, and you can just file it away.
I like that could be potentially be a very interesting way of storing a character. It's like, I have an escort mission. Well, I turn this on you, and now I've reduced you to a biography. I can put that in my book or my haversack, and I can carry that much more safely. Which obviously you'd need the spell Mark's going to suggest.
Yeah, paper to flesh, ripping off entirely Josh's idea, but facing the other direction. So you can create a person entirely in paperwork, entirely fictitious man, as Andy Dufresne, this guy in Shawshank Redemption does multiple times. He creates all these fictitious people in paperwork, but now you can then turn them into an actual person.
That's interesting. We've got a quick one for
Create
Pat.
a being bureaucratically in real life. You can do that and then create an actual person using this magic.
I put quick because I was actually just going to ask exactly what Mark said. Is if you just got an inert piece of paper and cast it on it, would it turn into a fleshy person with no
Golem.
history? But that's exactly just been answered. Sorry.
Yeah. And Chris?
Yeah, I was just going to chip in and say golems. I mean, this is actually really quite an interesting way of creating golems. How much backstory does the golem have when it's created? I mean, depending on what book you convert. And so, yeah, I really quite like that spell. The pair of spells. You could have a lot of fun with that.
You've also, I mean, here's a quick of my own. Say, for example, you're operating in a more modern world where you have printing is available, and you've got a printed copy of someone's biography. Could you mass produce a fighter and just keep casting this on books, or wander into a Waterstone store and just instantly summon a vast selection of badly edited celebrities? This is a quite terrifying spell for causing a lot of problems. I also quite like the idea of flash to paper. Mark?
I think if you do it with a biography, the person you get is a literal interpretation of what was written in the biography. So you don't get a copy of the actual person, you get what they wrote.
Mm.
So you get this weird kind of half-formed, not entirely a person kind of creature.
Yeah. I also quite like the idea. It just really amuses me in terms of having a role-playing game where one of the spells is you write a character on a piece of paper and then make them real through the power of your imagination. I quite like that. Moving on from that one, though, Pat, you've got writing recall.
Yeah, Emily came up with an idea for, well, you can
Like
say.
a magic quill that you can cast a spell on it and it will automatically write out whatever on your piece of paper, what was written beforehand. So if you're a spy and you've managed to nick, say, the king's pen, you can get a piece of paper and write out all the king's notes to his armies that he made several days ago.
That's quite interesting. You could also use it to leave messages behind, for example. That would work quite quickly, yeah. Joshua, explosions?
Boom! No, pretty much exactly as explosive runes, but as an entire piece of paper. Somebody goes through your filing cabinet trying to espionage, you pick up this particular piece of paper, boom, damage.
That could work quite well, though I would of course alphabetize it beforehand and then never go near the E section. And Chris, before we move on, you've got a couple?
Yeah, so just following on from the sort of spying side of things, it's just a secret writing. I mean, through disguise writing to hide the secret messages and things like that. I mean, I think in terms of the 66 system, how we'd have to do it, we'll need an advantage which can deal with both sort of encryption and decryption, a general sort of make clear, hide meaning sort of advantage, so you can apply it into lots of different ways rather than having lots of individual spells in the way D&D would do it. But that certainly would be, I think, it would be a useful spell for a clerical mage to have. And just going back to the golem, the flesh to paper or paper to flesh, I just think it just puts a whole new slant on what a ghostwriter would be. And actually, you could have it'd be an interesting job to be the person who writes the book, who then is converted into these golems. It'd be quite a skilled job coming up with a character who's loyal and obedient and has all the right skills you need. So, just a nice play on words as well.
Yeah, my final thought on that one before I move on to traveling wizards would be, if once you've turned someone into a book, do you have the ability to start editing that book? It's like, well, previously this character was really mopey because their parents had died. Parents live happily in a farm by the sea. And suddenly you completely rewrite the entirety of someone's own backstory by literally rewriting their backstory. So the next one we've got so before I jump to Chris, next one we've got upcoming is traveling wizards, so people can start thinking about advantages for that one. Chris, you've got a quick one on typo?
Yeah, just going on from what you were saying is that, one of the things, if you're writing stuff, you always end up with typos. It's just one of those facts of life. And I just had this idea for an adventure of one of these golems going wrong because there was a typo, sort of something like, got the words dairy and diary mixed up or something, really common words, and you end up with this really bizarre golem doing some very bizarre stuff just because of one simple typo.
Yeah, I mean, dairy and diary. You could either end up with a golem that you meant to write things down just produces milk, or a cow that's really fascinated with documenting its lifestyle. So for a traveling wizard, Joshua, the right path?
The right path is a very, very, very low level spell. It's pretty much very much a ping spell. Am I going the right way? Ping, yes. Am I going the right way? Ping, no. Instead of telling you exactly how to get to your destination, it's basically saying, am I going the right path? Am I going the wrong path? I've got split 2 paths, which one's the right one? Rather than going, hey, you need to go this, 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 and this to get to your destination.
Yeah, that works well. And it's potentially the more powerful the spell like that, we maybe put some keywords on it or limit its use, or things like static and the like. Because just as Pat's dropped in as a comment, we don't tend to use, for the audience, we don't tend to use levels of spells in 66. So things tend to have an equilibrium of nature of what they're at and how they work out. Speaking of equilibrium, Pat and or Emily, the dampening of equilibrium.
Yes, speaking as somebody who suffers monumentally badly with travel sickness, a spell which removed all the equilibrium from travelling on a plane or travelling on a train or travelling on an automobile would be really, really handy, so that you can sit on a bumpy road and feel like you're just sat at home on a chair. The perfect thing for me.
Yeah, just nice, quiet, relaxed, gentle, smooth traveling. It's like none of this bouncing around, none of the reasons why you're on a plane, like why is it at 90 degrees and getting really confused. No, that's a nice little one, that is. Like, you can, I mean, that's another way you can use it for an awful lot of situations. If you're in any situation where your character is feeling vertiginous, the ability to completely right themselves and render them slightly isolated from their environment, particularly like accelerations, like, could be pretty interesting. So I'm going to refer back to myself for the next one. I had the idea of, as someone who spends an awful lot of time stuck in traffic in a car by themselves, I quite like the idea of a traveling companion. So basically, you can get these things you can stick in your car. If you're a woman driving by herself, it's a fake man, which is just, it's Yeah, but it's an idea. So you got someone in your car, so it looks like you're not by yourself. I like the idea of essentially a traveling companion, but I like they made them an amiable traveling companion. So no matter what your opinion is, they always mostly agree with you. So you're never going to get in an argument with your amiable companion. Chris?
Yeah, I when I saw you sort of give that name of the spell, I thought actually my thought was actually it's a way if you're travelling on your own or in a very small group of having some companions to make it look like a bigger group, less which puts people off. So if you're on a bad bandit-filled highway and you're worried you're going to get jumped, if it looks like there's 20 of you, then that's going to be far less dangerous. So I just thought it was a way of making up numbers and appearing safer.
Yeah, I quite like the idea of using it to remove loneliness. That's actually just nothing stopping you casting it more than once. The slight problem is if you have a lot of amiable companions wandering around, they'll just endlessly start agreeing with each other, and it'll just sound like a group of drunk people in a pub using random sentences like, "Oh, well, at the end of the day, I think we'll all agree. Yes, I can't help but agree with that." And you'll just get this chatter of agreement walking down the path, which won't necessarily help.
No, but
okay.
if you only agree with most of your opinions, then you're going to get a certain sort of a circular effect as a sort of it just switches between different from agreeing to not agreeing. So yeah, you could have some interesting dynamics there.
Yeah, Mark, gravy.
Cube of Bunyan. This is referring back to one of the ones that came up on Reddit last time. This was a little cube you could throw in any kind of water, any kind of quality or dirtiness, and it would just produce bouillon, a nice drinkable broth. So no matter where you are, you always have clean water and gravy.
That works quite well. It's a nice little one that helps sit in.
Spell to have, kind of like in Pathfinder and D&D, the druids have the little just create water, so no matter where you are, you will never die of thirst. It's just a very obvious thing to have, really, as a traveller.
Mm-hmm. Emily, you want to find a pub.
I put it down as Summon Tavern. But
Oh, right. No, it was summon habitat.
I prefer a tavern.
So you use the spell, and whatever materials you've got around you, say you're lost in the woods or lost in the desert, it creates a little hideaway for you to spend the night.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Yeah, just either like a hole in the ground or a tent, or when you say habitat,
Yeah, like
or
a
habitation.
like a tent.
Yeah, because I misheard and heard habitat. I like the idea of you being in the middle of the desert and suddenly summoning a small area of forest because you're just spread up with sand, and you want somewhere a bit nicer on than that.
So I was going to say, I actually have a question for Emily. What if you walked into a town and you cast this spell? Would it try and make you a house out of all the houses around you?
Yes. Yes, it would.
Work well in a siege then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be a very effective way of solving a housing crisis, though I think people will eventually be complaining when there's more space inside the town than physically there should be. Speaking of which, finding space for unpleasant things, Chris?
Yes, I sort of went to the bottom of the matter, and just as someone who goes to festivals, and there is certainly a thing with festivals when you're camping is that the toilets are always some way off, and it's always about 3 o'clock in the morning when you're bursting for the loo. Just being able to summon a toilet to you rather than you having to go to it would certainly make life a lot nicer. So yeah, just summon toilet or some way of making the whole toilet experience more pleasant while you're on the road.
Yeah, no, I can see that being pretty useful. It's a nice little extra trick that will certainly help. Mark, you're going with a bag that automatically sorts?
Yep, whenever I'm travelling or camping or anything along those lines, whatever I need is at the bottom of the bag. I have to get everything out first. So I think a bag which automatically sorts it, so when you grab something, what you want is on the top.
Yeah.
Just be handy. Or a spell for just sort my bag to give me all the things I need now would be just a handy little thing to be able to do for a travelling wizard.
Yeah. Could it be something where it's tied to you? So what you want at the top of the bag, so somebody else rooting around in your bag wouldn't be able to find the thing you told the bag to put at the bottom?
Yeah, that works perfectly well. Or means if you want to sort around in somebody else's bag, everything that you want at the top of their bag is at the top. So it's useful for stealing things off people. When you touch someone's bag and go, I want their wallet. Zip.
Yep. And I'll move to Chris for a quick one. But reminding everyone, next one up, we're doing a social spellcaster. Chris?
Yeah, I was just thinking Mark's auto sort bag and the alphabetize are sort of like pointing at the same thing. You can have a general magic ability to organize things, of in any sort of like given order, maybe in alphabetical order, or maybe just on the order you specify. And so that would work very well in the 66 system because it's a nice general magical power. The magic of order. Putting things in order, I think would work quite well.
That could be pretty. I mean, yeah, the sort, basically. What kind of sorting wizard are you? Maybe some kind of, I don't know, headgear could help with this to organize things. Yeah. So, Mark, is that a traveling one you've got for flattened gradient?
It is, yeah. Because if you're traveling a lot, you'll be walking up and down roads. So always feeling like you're walking on the flat, or always feel like you're walking slightly downhill.
Eventually, that's going to really ruin your calves, but I can imagine it would make it a lot easier. You will essentially just gently adjust your natural gravity, so you're essentially falling in the direction you really want to go.
Or you're always walking on a nice flat pace. You walk up the side of a mountain, but you're actually kind of walking at normal to the surface rather than standing upright because your gravity is shifted, so you're walking up a nice flat plane.
You can have a lot of fun with that in other ways. It's just like, and that person over there, yeah, now you're falling upwards. Nice. So, moving on to social spellcaster. To me, social spellcasters are the kind of characters who, in social situations, always have a little trick of a bit of magic, a little thing in their hands they can quickly just flick and throw, and it makes any social interactions they've got just that little bit easier. So, Pat, was Apellomancy one for the social caster?
It was for the social caster, but I seem to have had a different idea for what a social spellcaster meant. Basically, Apellomancy would be like the magic of names. I'm actually lifting this from somewhere else, but you cast a spell, and you give somebody a name, and that's their name now. And whatever their name is, it informs their personality from then on.
Yeah, I know the webcomic you've stolen that from.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an interesting little idea, basically being able to manipulate people's social characteristics by essentially altering either their name or their true name, having some fun with that. Yeah. While I've got you, Pat, I'll switch to Emily with an icebreaker.
Yeah, just kind of an icebreaking spell that you kind of cast on a group of people at a party when things are a bit awkward, and automatically makes people like each other for a good half hour.
Well, not so much. I mean, it's the kind of thing you can do at the equivalent of a diplomacy role in D&D. Essentially, it's like everyone within the aura of this person has a sudden interest in other people's trivia. So it's just like, well, what are you doing? I do this. Oh, I suddenly know a little bit about the Ukraine. Or did you know something about pygmies? And it's a way of making sure conversations start. And because these kinds always start where people just get interested in their trivia. Yeah, that's a nice one. Chris, you've stolen one from earlier. Summon snack?
Yes, again, this is one from Reddit from last week, which was, I think it was Pat's never-ending bowl of peanuts, effectively. Because I'm thinking, one of the things, social spellcasters, someone who works in a court, where they have lots of big parties and things like that. Being able to ensure that there's enough food to go around, that everybody's got their drinks and things like that, it would certainly cut down on the waiting staff. So worth the investment into magic. So just something which at the party all the nibbles bowls get refilled automatically would be perfect from my point of view.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, yeah, it's just like this one that goes quite well with the icebreaker spell because you want people to be able to do something, and people waltzing around with nothing to do with their hands just seem to be a bit more tense. But Josh is interested in being fashionably late.
Fashionably late, but not too late. It's a spell that you cast on yourself and your travelling companions. That means just as you reach the party, you go for a brief dimension hop and arrive just at the point of being fashionably late, where everybody has to then pay attention to you because you're just waltzing in, and everyone's already been there for good, say, half hour to an hour, and you just walk in saying, "Hey, we're here, guys."
I mean, you could use that. I mean, you're talking about in case you're arriving early. I mean, it's also potentially interesting if you're arriving late. like really, really late. So actually, we need to make sure we're at this venue at a certain time. Or now we're just fashionably late. We're only half an hour, and everyone's going to be there. So that's quite worked. So yeah, alien time. Yeah, that worked quite well. So thanks, guys, for that one. I think we've got 4 or 5 good skill-based advantages we can pick up for our paths for 66 Magic. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Chris to talk about what we might be thinking about next week.
Yes. So what are we going to do next week? We've been doing sort of this like magic jaunt for the last 2 or 3 weeks. We've got obviously one thing we could do is take what these ideas we've got and actually sort of really crunch the mechanics to get it down into a 66 path or 2, and that will certainly be very useful and an interesting exercise. But the only problem with that is it's not a very good thing to share out. It's not a very good one for the social media, because unless you're really involved in making 66 stuff, it's going to be too technical. So I'm sort of a bit reluctant to do that. But Josh, I believe you've got some thoughts on aliens.
I do indeed. See, my universe now has quite a few civilized, to a point, of course, species. We haven't got anything monstrous. Well, this way we've got that. We've got a few, but I want something like the Xenomorph or the Thing, something that is truly horrible and not necessarily sentient, like an animal or some kind of creature, a plant even, anything. It could be small, it could be gigantic. Up to you.
Are you thinking, yeah, these are animals, effectively monstrous animals, rather than intelligent racers themselves?
Yeah, something to fill up the bestiary with. Hey, here's some creatures you could encounter on your planet hopping.
Yeah, so they're going to be quite localized and might develop in very specific environments, but I suppose some of them might get loose, like tribbles, or, Star Trek has several others along those lines. But so that sounds good. Do we all fancy doing some monstrous aliens next week? Alien
That
monsters?
could work quite well. Yeah, it's a good one. I think it's one that will post quite well. We may have to drift out of the sci-fi Reddit out of the RPG Reddit and maybe into the sci-fi Reddit to get a different response. But that looks like it could work quite well. It's also one that will work quite well with our habit of finding a good picture and asking questions about that. So Chris could find us some artwork of something unpleasant and then work from there.
I'm happy with that. Yeah, I think that's good. I did want to ask. I keep asking this, and I'm sorry. When are we doing the playtests again? Because
well, as soon as anybody is ready and in a position to playtest something, is what it comes down to.
I wanted to do Lovecraft playtests a couple of weeks ago, and just nothing seems to happen. That's all.
Okay, right. So we need to get organised for that then. So what and when are you thinking? How much do you want to do? I mean, what sort of stuff?
Well, I wanted to test out the ideas I'm writing on at the moment because I've gotten into that section. So I've just run a couple of games with the same characters. I was wondering if it would be possible to roll up some characters, well, as soon as possible, really.
Okay, I think best bet is we'll sort of look at the timings and when we can get together to do the playtesting. Hopefully we can do Friday evenings. We'll have to see who's available, but we'll take that offline. And hopefully either next week or the week after we'll get started on some playtesting then. So that's brilliant. Okay, right. I think we're sorted for next week with monstrous aliens. So I'm going to hand over to Josh, who's going to do our pluses and deltas.
Yeah. So I'm going to start again in the same order as the check-ins. Chris, your pluses and deltas, please.
Yes, pluses. I think we had lots of ideas. I think we did quite well in actually producing our own ideas. I think maybe we had a stockpile after the last couple of weeks of looking at Reddit to add our ideas. So that was good. Lots of ideas. Delta didn't get down to some of the crunchy stuff I would have liked to have done. I'd like to sort of got to things and I'm thinking, well, how is this actually going to work as an advantage? But maybe that's for another day.
Okie dokie. How about you, Pat? What do you think?
Yeah, pluses again. I think. I really enjoy this. I think everybody wants to be a clerical mage now because they seem to have so many more spells. Deltas, actually, you sort of brought this into my mind. It's just kind of we don't really have a system for negating more powerful spells to later characters or anything like that. And I know maybe we don't particularly need one, but it's been spotted now, basically.
Okie dokie. Jay, apart from the lack of cheesecake, what are your pluses and deltas?
It's good getting into this, getting some ideas and some advantages. I'm going to second Chris's point of view. I think while it might not be necessarily very fashionable to get stuck in and just literally just build one path during a session, I think it's something we perhaps should think about doing at some point. I mean, yeah, we are a general RPG think tank, but we are the 66 think tank, and part of the reason we're doing this is to come up with ideas for 66, particularly in this case 66 Magic. So, yeah, I think do give ourselves a break and do an alien monster, just dance around that and have a look. But I think getting stuck in and doing some path building would be interesting.
Fantastic. How about Mark with the magnificent beard?
Pluses, my beard is indeed magnificent. Deltas, I want to grow the little bit in the middle here. It doesn't quite join up, and that really annoys me. Pluses, yeah, interesting to have a think and come up with some stuff. I like the ideas we had. I'm particularly really keen on the stuff with the clerical mage, being able to turn people back and forth from people to information written on a page. It sounds like quite a really powerful and interesting world where we can do that, particularly if you start talking about the internet, because then you're kind of transmitting people over the wires. So that's all pretty quite cool. The deltas, can't really think about my own, so I like other people's. Yeah, it would be good to kind of knuckle down and actually write one of these things and balance the paths up, and that kind of stuff, because of the set we've got here, the clerical mage seems to be a very powerful path, whereas the food mage not so much. So having a bit more of working a bit of balance there maybe might be a good thing to work out.
Wicked. As for myself, pluses. Once again, I had a very, very good giggle at some of the stuff we've created. And it's the weekend tomorrow, so that's all good. I seem to have forgotten Emily again. I'll go to there in a second. Deltas. I don't really have any deltas this week. It's been a very, very good session. And so I will welcome to Emily. How have you been?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. Pluses, really good meeting. I thought we were really efficient. And yeah, not too much hat stand, just went straight to business. Deltas, people. It's been nice to see people try and get back some of the old regulars again.
Fantastic. Oh, Chris, I believe you have something to say.
Yes, just on the couple of things to follow up before we sign off. I think the idea of going back maybe next week or the week after and doing the crunch then, I think will be a good idea, because I think it'll be very useful for everybody to look at some of these problems like one Pat touched on about how do you handle more powerful spells. And we can, because I think that'll be very useful for all of us to see how the system holds up to that. And also on Emily's point, we would, we need to sort of get a few more people. I haven't been pushing this as hard over the last 2 or 3 weeks in terms of getting people on board the Hangout. So I need to sort of pick that up again.
In that case, I should pass you back on to the sign-off. How about me? Completely professional tonight. Mark, sign us off.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Josh. So that's what we've got so far, a bunch of culinary mages and the terrifying power of being able to turn people into paper and back again. So we're going to come back again next week with this idea of going over some alien monsters and coming up with life you find on other planets and the kind of stuff to build up a bestiary in the in the sci-fi world. So we are, of course, on Facebook and Google Plus and Reddit. Please look us up on there. We'll put up the posts there with pictures and all sorts, and it'd be nice to get a debate going and get some ideas together there. Anything you put up there which we quite like, we'll talk about on here and go over those and flesh out your ideas. It'd be great to be glad to see you on those. So, from all of us tonight, so from Chris, Pat, Josh, James, Emily, and myself, good night, and we'll see you online next week.